Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me is Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, and we are going to go back and pick up from where we left off as far as Agniveer program is concerned. We had done a program 2-3 years ago when it was first introduced, and what it needed to be tweaked. And to our pleasant surprise, and to all of our viewers' surprise, I'm sure, a lot of the things that General Ravi Shankar had suggested in that hangout have actually been listened to and implemented. So we want to take a look at where it was, where it is, and where it needs to go, and why politics has no place in the armed forces. To know all about this and more, let's welcome Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar. General Ravi Shankar, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskar and thanks a lot, Sree Iyer ji. It's a pleasure again to come back on the Friday show. That's what I call it with PGurus. And a topic which is current and topical, and it's hitting the headlines all over and social media all over, Agniveer. But the thing which dismays me most is the politics is dominating the actual story. You know, it's a whole case of smoke and mirrors to a large extent. Politics, I wouldn't say anyone is right or wrong in this. I think everyone is spinning a story to their whole thing. I think we need to relook at what this whole thing is all about. I mean, let's go back because I find that that people are losing the original focus of Agniveer. People are writing whatever they want and however they want and twisting the whole thing, everything. So I'll spend a couple of minutes explaining what the Agniveer envisioned and what are the problems of it. As we all know, Agniveer was supposed to be a transformational thing for the armed forces, where you inducted people for, 4 years. After 4 years, 75% were to be taken out and 25% were to be retained. Fine. And that was meant to save your, pension bill and modernize the armed forces and also make the armed forces younger and all that. That is what it was. But the reality was that, the mathematics didn't add up. The fundamental thing is you can do all this, but the basic reason why the armed force exists is to defend the nation. And this transformational change, as it was called, does it do that basic thing? It didn't. It fails that asset test. There's no point in having a young armed forces which is incompetent. Why was this? What are the problem with the Agniveer? And this is something which we have discussed 4 years back. I mean, 3 years back when the whole thing started. And I'll reiterate it. See, what happens is a unit is made of experienced people and inexperienced people. Normally, it takes about 4 to 5 years for a youngster who joins a unit. I'm not talking joins the army or the navy. A person goes through basic training for about 8 to 10 months and 1 year, and then joins the unit. Once he joins the unit, also, it takes him about 4 to 5 years to be considered a good soldier. Till then, he's like he's shepherded along. He's just part of a cog. He's just a cog in a wheel. And you need a lot of experienced soldiers on top. You have who have seen battle, who have seen situations, who have seen everything. So he's taught the whole thing through. In this case, what happens is you are expecting him fundamentally. The fundamental flaw is like you're expecting him that the day he gets joint service, he's a gladiator, which he's not. And he can't be a gladiator because his training is also reduced, apart from everything else. Just when he's about to start learning his whole story, he is sent out. And 75% of them are sent out, which is wrong. Now, what happens in this kind of a fast turnover, mathematically, in a matter of 4 to 5 years, maybe 6 years, you will suddenly find a experience inversion. You will find in a unit, right? There'll be more Agniveers than the experienced people. And that's dangerous. Okay. I mean, let me put it in perspective. In a gun detachment, there are, depending on the gun, there are about 7 to 9 or 10 people. Now, out of that, normally, under normal conditions or the earlier conditions, you had about 7 experienced people and 2 to 3 youngsters in various stages of service. So that's okay. When those elders retired, the youngsters picked the slack and they grew. In this case, you're going to have 5 to 6 people who are Agniveers, and that's not far. That's about 28, 29, 30. In that time period, that inversion will happen. And when that inversion happens, you don't have experienced people handling complicated equipment. You don't have experienced people handling, combat situations, especially in infantry. So that's a huge operational, problem. Your guys are not good. And what's the strength of your army? The strength of your army is your manpower. One shouldn't underestimate the strength of the human thing against technology. In any war, it is the man behind the machine which matters. And if you don't have a good man, there's a problem. The second thing is, there's a fast turnover. 75% of people who are inducted every year into a unit are being taken out. So at every stage, people are being rotated out. Now that breaks teamwork. And in the army, everything is based on teamwork. You put trust. Trust is something, very important in the army, right? Armed forces as a whole. You trust the other man to do the right thing for you and for the nation and for everyone. And lives are at stake. Now, if the turnover is so fast, the teamwork doesn't build that you have that kind of blind trust. I mean, let me put it in perspective. This trust is lifelong. The guys with who were, when I was an officer, guys with who came in service in front of me as youngsters, today have retired and they're old. And they're retired, and their sons and children are getting settled in life. They still ring me up, and they still ring me up for what they trust, and the trust born and say, sir, आप तो हमारे सीओ साहब थे, तो आपके पास ही हम जाएंगे और कहाँ जाएंगे. Similarly, men say, sir, वो हमारे जेसीओ थे, उन्हीं का सलाह लेंगे हम. So there's a matter of trust. That trust is broken when there's a fast turnover and there's a competitive nature. After all, for every 100 people who are being selected, 75 are going out. Only 25 are being retained. So 4 years of competitiveness. So it breaks the operational thing completely. So the Agniveer doesn't, never satisfy the operational requirement. Now, if it doesn't solve the operational requirement, rest saving money, everything was a useless thing, right? On the other hand, you saw when the Agniveer scheme came in, there were a whole lot of riots all over the country. I mean, those riots were not without reason, because the people at the ground understood the implications of this because the shoe was pinching them. We are talking of an Indian society where serving in the armed forces is a matter of honor, right? And so people were denied pensionable jobs, a government job, a matter of, they were being denied the opportunity to serve in the most honorable position, profession in India. So you saw that outburst immediately. Well, anyway, the politics continued. Now you found that echoing in the elections also, where if someone says, look, it didn't affect the election outcomes, well, he's wrong. It did affect the election outcome. Then it didn't cater for the aspiration of the youth. You see, aspiration of the youth is something very important. And then now it is emerging that there are flaws in the, if there is, how do you compensate the Agniveers? It's nice to say you'll get certain pay, it will be there at the end, you'll get 10, 15 lakhs, but what happens if a young man dies? And that's what the whole story is about. This 𝙒𝙖𝙦. This boy has, laid his life for the nation. And when did he lay it? In January. It is not new. It's now almost 6 months back. Now there is a controversy that he has not got his money. He has not got his, thing. But let me explain. Because this explanation I have not seen anywhere. As of now, he's got money. It's not as if his family has not got. What have they got? They've got insurance from SBI and they've got insurance from the AGIF. Fine. And that's the fastest. And it's nearly 1 crore, which is quite a bit. Right? I'm not it, that doesn't compensate loss of life, but the compensation has been given. What is not given? What is not given is the ex gratia allowance, entitlement on death. Why? There's a reason for this. The Indian Army has not put it out, but let me put it. See, when a person enrolls into the army, the first thing is he goes through a verification process. So he's allowed to join and he goes through. And the verification invariably happens after a year or two. It's not an issue. What is the verification involved? All your details are sent to your police station, and the police station goes to your house. They check the records, whether he's got a thing, imprisonment or any fine or whatever. His police records are checked, what normally. And then the whole thing goes back. It is a routine thing. It takes 1.5 years. Incidentally, I've also gone through that at some point of time, right? So there is, issue in the whole story which we have to understand. Incidentally, when an officer gets commissioned, he is first enrolled as an NCO, and he is also verified. It's only after during the training period, once the whole thing is over, he gets commissioned. So this process has not probably gone through, and that is why his ex gratia allowance and all has not yet been given. Till such time this verification is not done, you can't give. Now, these things should have been actually seen through before you started the scheme. But the scheme was put through in a hurry and it was not seen. Now, if you left the opening, the opposition will take over. So they were exploiting. Now you have to respond. Now, there's yet another issue of politics in this. I must explain. You see, this Agniveer is no more. Poor chap is not with us. And the Punjab government has given him 1 crore. Now the question is, does the Punjab government or any government in India give 1 crore for every soldier who dies? They don't. Now that's also politics. Okay. So the whole thing has now become political. The other thing is that it depends on state government to state government. Some government gives something, some other government gives something for people who are martyred or who are, next of kin of martyrs, or even for disablement. Okay, so there is a difference between what one state government gives and the other government gives. Now all that leads to bad politics. Now the scheme is as it is flawed. Now that is now being compounded by bad politics. Unless someone sits down and now everyone is defending his position. The ruling parties and the opposition parties are now more into defending their position and making brownie points. Now who will suffer in this whole story? It is the armed forces who will be unnecessarily in the news for the wrong reasons, right? And the nation suffers. Now, is this what you and I are voting for? For these people to do this kind of a thing? I don't think so. And the need of the day, is that you just immediately at least announce review of a scheme. Make it an all-party kind of an approach. It's a consensual approach. It's the national security which is at stake in this whole story, ultimately. It is not the whim and fancy of one party in government or one set of individuals in government. It's a government of India, which is probably higher. It's a constitutional issue. So why not have a bipartisan thing or forget about all this? Give it back to the army and say, please give us a new proposal which manages all this. You don't need a political thing. Just make professionals handle this. You have a professional approach to this. the whole thing will go. And it will settle. Of course, there will be some issues which will continue. But what I see is instead of this professional approach, the political approach is being taken. That that dismays me, to be very honest. Right? So I thought I'll put all these across, and we can, discuss. You might have questions also on this, and we could discuss, and then we could go to, everyone else.
Yes, indeed. A couple of things, viewers. See, these days we are having a bit of a problem in terms of the notifications being sent out to you. There was all too brief a period where everything seemed to be hunky dory, and then we are back to the situation where we are not seeing the kind of response. This topic, especially since it's so hot and so misunderstood, that people would come back to understand the clarity behind this. So, may I request all of you to like this video? It's coming simultaneously on Ganeshot as well as PGurus, and it needs a much, much broader audience. General Ravi Shankar, today I'm also beaming it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is usually not something that I use normally, but do it once in a while, because this is more of an employee, corporate, that sort of a mindset that people need to understand, so that we cover the people who are perhaps in a position to do something about it. General Ravi Shankar, when you came on our channel to explain how this could be modified, mota, right? And then again, now it is so. So let's say this is where they started, this is where you were, and somewhere now it should be coming here, where it might satisfy 90%. It will never satisfy 100%. That's a given. Democracy is like that. So where do you think? So you are here. Let's walk us back from there to here. What is happening?
Yeah. So, look, fundamentally, the scheme, Agniveer or something like this, was needed. I mean, there's no doubt. The army was getting older, and we needed to reduce the age profile of the army. The army was modernizing, right? And there's no doubt about it. And we also needed to reduce the pension bills. I mean, on these three, there's no two ways about it. So you needed that. Now, how would you do that? The way you should have done it is you come out with a scheme, go back. Actually, if you go back in time, uh, around the 71, 70s, 80s, the terms of engagement was only 7 years. After 7 years, a man left. And slowly the terms of engagement changed for many reasons. So the thing is that you go back to that that fundamental benchmark and say, okay, to reduce the age of the army, you go back to a thing that where a person who is inducted stays in service for 7 years and after that he exits. Uh, but you don't exit everyone. You exit only part of them. Okay, you exit only part of them. In fact, that's the whole story around which, I mean, that's the baseline around which you have to work. In my opinion, I mean, okay, even before that, now that you unroll the scheme, you can't roll it back. I mean, that's out. That will be the worst thing that can happen. You don't roll it back. How you need to modify it to suit your requirements, right? So how do you do that? So my way of looking at it, and which I've written about it in Financial Express, many more other things, and we've spoke last week also on this whole story in PGurus only. The way to do it is have a graded exit. Okay, graded exit means what? Okay, 25% or the weakest of the lot whom you selected as Agniveers, send them out after 4-5 years. Right. After the 2-3 years, maybe at 7, 6, 7, 8 years, you send another 25% out. And then maybe at about 9-10 years, you send another 25% out. And you still retain 25%. Right? That will spread the experience thing all over. And that enables skill development the way the army wants, and it meets the operational requirements. Fine. If people feel that this graded exit at regular intervals is not there, fine, go to 7 years, 8 years. After 7 years of service, let him go. Okay. and let him go into this thing. But this also has to be matched with reskilling this individual. Give him an assured next career. I'm talking about next career. That career could be in the army. Yeah, I mean, not in the army. That career could be in the government or it could be in the private sector. So reskill him, right? And especially this labor, I will call it in the terms of labor only. This is skilled, disciplined labor from a industry viewpoint. And this is gold. And especially at a time when you're looking at Atmanirbharta and things like that, these chaps will be very good. And we have to understand that Agniveers, after say 5, 6, 7, 10 years of service, are leaders in their own right with a lot of initiative, well trained, disciplined, tough, well taken care of. And they will do much better things than the normal. So if you put them into responsible positions, they'll deliver for the nation, whether it's in governance or otherwise. And for that, you need it to, or in paramilitary forces, right? You have a whole lot of paramilitary forces where you can sidestep these people without any effort. And the provisions for this were recommended, incidentally, in the Fifth Pay Commission, not now. Today we talk of Seventh Pay Commission. Fifth Pay Commission. The Fifth Pay Commission very clearly said, sidestep all those who are, exiting from the armed forces into the paramilitary forces, and stop recruiting people into the paramilitary forces directly, so that you save on their recruitment process, their training, everything, and use this, which is a very sensible thing to do. So you have to go back to that. So actually, the answers for all this are there within the system. It's only that you have to get over the politics of this. So corporates, why can't corporates take? You have a whole lot of defense and aerospace industry coming up as part of Atmanirbharta. Why don't you reskill them? Say, if a chap is there till about 8, 9 years in the as Agniveer, after that, you can then send him out for 2, 3 months, do reskilling and resettle him. Right? The failure of doing so is also what will be the effect on society if these chaps left unskilled, they go out at 4 years of service. They will become, what they could become. They could be a menace in the society. Trained, armed people could be a menace in the society. But someone will say, look, they won't have arms, but getting arms in certain parts of India is not a great thing. So there are a whole lot of issues which are there connected. And then when you throw a person out or send him out after 4, 5 years without any, benefit or attachment to the system, he's loose, right? He doesn't have any identity left. So if you give him some status, it might not be full ex-serviceman status. If you give him some status, right, of having served in the army and all that, then he remains attached to the army with a sense of discipline, belonging. All of us need belonging, otherwise we are orphans, right? So all these issues have to be rethought of and put together. Now, again, are these things known or not known? They're all known. There's nothing very new about it. They're all known. In fact, like I said earlier, when I wrote all those initial articles about Agniveers within the first 4, 5 months, I sent it to the people who matter. And one of the very senior officers came back to me after about 3, 4 months. He said, sir, I have all your documents and all your writings with me. And I am going to implement them in times to come. And right, I also understand that the armed forces have put up a proposal to the government for a modification of this Agniveer. So that also the government has kept quiet so far. The way out of this whole story is there's no white paper and all that which is required the way people are saying. All you have to do is announce a modification. Look, this Agnipath or Agniveer system is going to get modified. And we're giving back to the armed forces to give us proposals. And I think by now the armed forces have their proposals ready and put them through, and this whole story will settle. It's a very simple thing to do, but politically, will they do it is the question, right? That's what I thought I'll put across. Yeah, we've clarified, so we could take on a few other
Very,
issues.
very true,
You
sir.
see,
See, sometimes what happens is, viewers, we lose the big picture.
yeah,
Everywhere, pensions have become a huge percentage of the overall budget. And this is only growing because we are living longer lives, we are living healthier lives. And the way the pension scheme was structured up until 2000, I think, or 2004, there was no contribution from the employee towards his or her own pension plan. Only after that there is some participation, and that kind of takes a little bit of burden off of the government. But before that, it was something else. See, if the husband dies or the wife dies, the successor, the survivor, gets it. And sometimes the next generation also, one person gets it. Let us say there are three children, they have to agree on which one should be the beneficiary. That person also gets it. So it's not just one person's pension, it is over a period of 50, 60, 80, 90 years, something like that is going on. So understand, viewers, that the amount of money the government gets is not infinite. So there is a finite amount. That's a pie. It's like a pizza pie. How much of a percentage you want to cut, it depends upon how much you have crying babies, how many other things you have. So there's a lot of jugglery that takes place here. So we have to understand all those things. Let's hope that this government will do what exactly you said, that we have asked the armed forces for a proposal, and once that comes in, we'll implement it, or
yeah,
we'll leave it at that. And we know what is going to come. I'm sure the Congress and the India Alliance people are also watching this. It's good that the opposition is also raising issues. It makes the ruling government work more efficiently, be more proactive, more quickly reacting things, and that's all good. But at the end of the day, work needs to be done, and that's what the good general is saying. Just do it this way, and then it just will go away. There'll be always another problem, another day, another challenge, and so on and so forth. General Ravi Shankar, we have a few questions from our viewers,
yeah, yeah.
and maybe
Please,
we can take those now.
yeah.
Partha wants to know, is US offering Stryker for us to not choose local alternative from Tata, or are they wanting to learn our real capability in DEWs?
Or directed energy weapons. Okay, Pata, this is a out of syllabus question, but let me tell you, the striker is going through trials, right? And for India to have a certain number of strikers is also okay. Uh, why we need a few strikers is interoperability tomorrow in case of any need with USA. After all, you have a strategic partnership going, you have military to military equation which is going well, and you need to modernize, and the Tata vehicle can't come in all together in one go, right? So if you have two sources of induction, which is good, and some strikers are okay, though I go with a lot of people to say, why should you buy a striker at all? I mean, fundamental is, when you have your own capability, why do you want to go in with others? But I think there are issues in this which are beyond what we normally think. Like I said, a few strikers are okay for international operations. We don't know how things are going. And if you are a power of consequence, you need certain amount of interoperability. It's okay to have a few strikers. And maybe the strikers have something which we are not able to foresee at this point of time, why the army is still going in for the strikers. But having said all this, let me tell you, based on what I've experienced, the strikers will only enter service if they go through trials properly. At this point of time, they're going through trials only. First, the trials have to go through, and the process of trials in our country will not compress very easily. It will take another 6 to 7 months. That's the minimum for the trials to finish. After that, there's an assessment, the whole thing, and then the FMS procedure kicks in. What is FMS procedure? It's a foreign military service sales procedure of the US Army, or the US government. that kicks in. That also is not an easy process. It's not an easy process at all. I've been through it. It took me over 4 years to clinch it, to sign off on a deal. So we don't know how fast this will go through or not. So I don't think we should jump the gun on this.
Next one, please. Moment Sudhakar Vati wants to know, dear sir, do you agree with Rahul Gandhi allegations on Indian Army, I think, regarding status of Shahid?
Well, I'll not talk of Rahul Gandhi allegations, that's political. But let me put it this way. Like I said, the Agniveer program, Agnipath, actually the program is Agnipath. The Agnipath scheme has certain deficiencies, right, which I explained to you. So those deficiencies are being exploited politically. No, those deficiencies came in because the government hurried the scheme through, and even after implementing the scheme, they have not thought of reviewing the scheme. So this is something which is if you leave a loose end, you are bound to get something back. So that's what's happening. More than that, I will not comment on this.
Next one, Srinivasrao Vepachedu wants to know, a new program needs to go through the process, feedback, review, revise, and improve, and repeat the process. Agnipath implemented from September 2022 to 26 batch, feedback in 2026. Why politicking?
Look, by 2026, it will be too late. That's what I've been saying. You're not, that means, you see, you are also, all of you, most of you are viewing it from the wrong prism. That this is a scheme implemented, you need feedback, and then you do. That is the worst way of doing things. Why? Because this is a flawed scheme. It was flawed from the day it was implemented. And I'm one of the people who, even before the day the scheme was implemented, I had a column up, right, to say these are the problems of the scheme. They are broad as daylight. You have to accept the fact that you brought in a bad scheme. If you brought in a bad scheme, you don't need feedback. The feedback is already with you. So you have to start modifying it. Look, who better to give you the feedback than people of India? And the people of India have rejected it. Right? The army doesn't like it. The people of India doesn't like it. Why are the politicians, what are you waiting for? You don't need a feedback on this. The feedback is adequate. You need to change. Time for action.
Next one, please. Srinivas Kambanpati wants to know, sir, one post on X got more than 20,000 views on payment of premium to insure soldiers. I understand that contribution is from soldiers and not government. Is this true, sir?
Well, this is partly true and partly not true. Again, the whole story, why is this politicking happening is because of the politicking. Okay, Srinivas, you've been following me, and I'm grateful you asked this question. The point is, SBI and Indian Army have a symbiotic relationship, right? And the insurance for all these people has been done through SBI at rates which are far lesser than what they would go for others. It's a special scheme for these Agniveers, which the Indian Army and the government, I will not leave the government out, have negotiated. Payment would be there. Payment would be there by the individual on the premium. But the amount of premium for the sum assured would have been negotiated on a special deal. One. Number two, there would be some payment for the AGIF, that's the Army Group Insurance Fund, which also pays. That also is at a special rates. So you pay for insurance. The government won't pay for the insurance, but the insurance premium which you have to pay is far less than otherwise you had to pay for the same sum assured. Okay. To that extent, to say the contribution is only from soldiers is right, and the government doesn't contribute to the premium is right. But the government facilitates that. So government is, you can't say the government does, because the government doesn't pay, the government is to be held responsible. Like I said, this is all a lot of politicking going on without understanding the fundamentals. Okay, so that's how it is. Yeah.
Next one, please. Brian Anderson wants to know, food for thought. The only other modern political leader to call himself was Kim Il-sung. Any thoughts, Mr. Sree, on the Indian non-bio one, since you are on that side of the political spectrum? Call himself, Brian, I think this statement of Prime Minister Modi has been misinterpreted, in my opinion. And these are things that you normally utter as part of your culture. So I think whatever it is, we shouldn't attribute too much to it. Let's move on. And my general opinion about the 2024 elections, again, I'm trying to keep politics out of this discussion, was perhaps the PM gave one interview too many, was not needed. Then it also tells you that perhaps he was concerned that the results were what they turned out to be. They do have an ear to the ground. So look, everything in hindsight looks very clear, but at the time of the thing, you don't know. So I think we should just leave it at that. Let's take a look at this Agniveer. Let's focus on that again. Next question, please. Rahul Nandoskar wants to know, do we need Agniveer scheme? Can't we go back to our original recruitment policy? I think we explained this, right? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we don't go back. There's no road back. Let's be very clear. There's no road back. The road ahead is what we have to look. And the road ahead is that you modify the scheme. You modify the scheme to suit everyone's requirement. And there is a method. It's not as if it can't be done.
Next one, please. Akash Mihir 84 has the good general forgiving General Naravne for implementing Agniveer with loopholes.
Look, let me also put it. I have never accused General Naravne of doing anything wrong, or on the scheme also. In all my writings and all my talks, this is the first time I'm taking his name. I have not even taken his name so far. So to that extent, I don't know where you got this thing that I'm against Naravne. I'm not. That's the first thing. He's a chief. He's done the right thing. And he gave a proposal to the government. But what I understand is that proposal which he gave with what he gave has been modified. It has been modified, and after that, the armed forces were kept out of the loop. It was a political decision to implement it the way it was implemented. And the armed forces, and the good armed forces we stood by that political decision. The armed forces officially stood by that political decision. When it was announced, all the three chiefs were sitting next to Mr. Rajnath Singh. When it was announced, they stood by it, despite knowing fully well it was a flawed scheme. It was as if people didn't understand, but they stood by the government. It devolved on veterans like us who held high appointments to point it out. Well, there were a set of politically motivated veterans also who went completely one way or the other. Okay. And there were guys like me, like General Vinod Bhatia. I'm quoting him, General Vinod Bhatia, who was the old ex-DGMO, and people like him and I, we stood up and said, look, we agree that you need a transformational scheme. It's not as if you don't need this transformational scheme, but you need to modify it to have some sensibility. At this point of time, from then to now, it's now 2 years plus, this scheme does not meet the national requirement. Okay. So there's no question of all this. It's just that, well, things have happened the way they've happened. That's why I said, when yesterday we were to discuss this, and Shreya said, "So what should be the heading of this podcast?" I said, "Politics and Agniveer." Normally, I don't talk of politics, but here, unfortunately, I'm not talking of a party politics. I'm talking of the political system of our country, which is, for whatever reason, are going wrong, and our country is at stake. That's why I've come out like this.
Next question, please. Why NN wants to know why government is not proactive to make policy changes like Agniveer they are doing now. Why wait for election debacle? Sends wrong signal that politicians care only about elections.
It's not a wrong signal, it's the right signal. I mean, let's face facts. I mean, across the board, you go through the history of India, politicians will always do anything for elections. There's nothing new. Which political party? I'm going to ask you this question. Which political party has stood up and said, "Look, we will not do this because it affects it affects this security or great interest of India." That's a problem with our politics. Okay, and even now the government has not even announced that, look, we're going to modify this. So I think there are politics are something, I really can't understand why these people are not doing it. And that is why I say I am completely apolitical. It doesn't matter me whether there's a Congress government in place or a BJP government in place, or even tomorrow it could be a DMK government in place. The outcomes are the same, right? If your inputs are different and the outcomes are the same, there's something wrong with the inputs, isn't it? Yeah.
Very true, sir. Sid wants to know, Namaste. Will Agnipath scheme have indirect or direct effect on future plans of theaterization of armed forces?
Theaterization and Agnipath have no correlation. Theaterization is structure to macro. It's a macro reform to make the various, to get jointness into the system, to tackle joint logistics, communications, decision making at the higher level, so that we all fight as through a synergy. It brings in a whole of government approach. It brings in a joint service approach, right? That is something different. Agnipath is a fundamental issue where you are changing the very basic structure of the armed forces. So there's no correlation between the two.
Thank you so much, General Ravi Shankar. Although I wish 10 more times the number of people who actually watch this program should have watched it. Sometimes the notifications go out a little bit later. Hopefully it will. And the last time General Ravi Shankar was on our channel, I think we got about 25,000 views. So General Ravi Shankar, your thoughts are appreciated, very well respected, sir. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my goodness, we did so much prep. And
no, that's okay.
Our duty is to
that's okay. I'm sure this will get a pickup. If it's not live later on, also people will say there's no issue with this.
Thank you so much, sir. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Next week, General Ravi Shankar, same time, we'll be talking about something else. Thank you once again, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.